We're live. We're live.
Going live.
On a Monday.
On a Monday. The day that comes after Sunday. Hey guys, welcome back to Testing Normal. This is Curtis.
This is Jordan, I think.
Yeah, is it? You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Episode 77.
7-7, and this is a podcast where we talk about anything and everything we want.
Which tonight is going to be so many things because we have an amazing guest.
We do indeed have
who
an
I've already
amazing guest.
spent a ton of time talking to.
Yeah.
It was a joy.
Yeah.
Joel Garbon.
The one
is
and
here
only
with us.
Mr. Garbon. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Garbon.
Great to be here with you guys.
Yeah.
I would explain all the places and things that you have done, but I will let you do that because I will forget it and totally mess it up. I did look up your book. It looks fantastic. It was co-authored, right?
Co-authored with Gene Manning.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that was called
Breakthrough Power.
Breakthrough Power. Okay.
Yeah,
I saw the German versions too.
Yeah,
which
there's
is
actually, I think, 7 or 8 different translations that are out there.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, real quick, what is your background, I guess, as far as did you major in some scientific field or?
I have a degree
history?
in applied science.
Okay.
So I'm a scientist primarily focused on chemistry,
Okay.
but
Awesome.
have a lot of kind of general science skills, I think. So I consider myself a generalist.
Nice. Right on.
So and worked a lot in engineering fields as well. So
Okay. Yeah, and you had previously said working in the engineering field, you did quite a bit of, would you say consulting work, or what was the type of work you were doing in Canada with engineering groups?
you know, I've had a career in industry for about 35 years, and about 2 decades was in the pulp and paper industry.
Oh, okay.
And traveling mostly around North and South America and consulting with paper companies about how to optimize their paper making process.
Oh, wow.
Really?
So, and I had invented a couple of formulations that have been used
Wow.
for paper making
That's amazing.
for some time. I left that field, went to run a nonprofit, kind of started a nonprofit with some others. That's an interesting story. And ran that for about 11 years. I went back into industry in the water treatment field, specifically for stormwater treatment. The stormwater is the biggest source of pollution.
Okay.
which is where you
in
met
North
my
America.
dad.
That's where I met your father. That's right.
Because I didn't lead with that. My dad has been telling me for how long
Yeah.
you need to get Joel on the podcast. Joel needs to talk to you guys. He will blow your mind. And here he is.
So
finally.
excited.
So in that field, in the stormwater field, I invented a couple technologies that are used to take the pollutants out of the water when it rains and washes all this nasty stuff off the roads
Wow.
and parking lots.
When you say you invented a couple of solutions, were they actually like chemicals that you apply to the water, or was it like filtration
No,
systems?
these are mechanical treatment systems. One of which uses filtration, another one uses some gravity separation.
Oh, okay.
And those have done pretty well. There's been thousands of those systems installed around the U.S.
Wow.
and Canada. And
When you
been going-
invent something like that, does that mean you own a patent on that technology, and then the cities license that technology from you? Essentially?
So I have several patents to my credit. And usually what happens when you're working for a corporation, which I was when I developed the technologies, normally you will be required to assign the patent over to the company,
Right.
because they provided all the money for the development costs and
okay.
all the legal and the patent filings and all that, which was the case with me as well. So that's not unusual to do, because one thing a lot of people don't realize is that when you invent something and you patent it, there's no guarantee at all, simply because you have a patent, that it's ever going to be commercially successful.
Right.
The vast majority of inventions go nowhere.
Right.
And so there's significant financial risk when you're going through millions of dollars in development costs and all that. So it's reasonable that the trade-off is that, the company who sponsors the development work and pays for, filings and all that kind of thing, that they're assigned the patent, and then they continue to pay the inventor
That's
with,
whatever
with
whatever royalty that might be considered.
Sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, I guess in some way that might be what could happen with like Pfizer or some like medical company. If you have someone that's like, hey, I believe I have found the cure for this type of disease.
COVID-19.
Will you pay? Will you sponsor me to develop this medication, and then you could develop some type of deal.
Normally, those will be employees within their company,
right.
and it's usually pretty standard boilerplate that any inventions that are discovered on company time, those are assigned to the company.
Yeah,
because they're paying for it.
Had you discovered your filtration systems prior to being a part of said companies?
I had, because I had worked in the paper industry for 20 some years. I'd been exposed to very very elaborate filtration systems because that process is so complicated, the paper making process itself, that I had a lot of ideas already. So when I went into the stormwater treatment field, that was a fairly low sophistication type of industry as far as mechanical and chemical processes. So there were some things that I could translate pretty quickly. Cool. that had good effect for that system. Yeah.
That's really cool.
That's cool. But that's not what you're doing now.
Well, I still do. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I still do work in the stormwater field, primarily in Canada, and I do provide consultation and regulatory guidance for how you use these treatment technologies so that we can best protect the downstream waters that we're putting stormwater into. It might be a river or a lake or a bay.
Right.
It's really important that we clean a lot of this nasty pollutants that are in the stormwater runoff, because if you don't do that, it'll kill the aquatic life.
Because we're so dirty.
Yeah,
we put so much chemicals on the ground, and
a lot of it is just from the result of traffic.
Sure,
there's a lot of chemicals, tire crumb, brake dust that has toxic metals in it. Other things that can really play havoc on the aquatic life. So salmon that used to populate a lot of the urban streams, whether in, let's say, Seattle has quite a few urban rivers that had good sizable populations of salmon, but a lot of those salmon runs had been pretty devastated by the effects of stormwater runoff, as well as Puget Sound itself, just from all the accumulated toxins that have gone in, from that metro area over time. So it's really important to address this. And people think, oh, well, that smokestack over there, that must be a huge source of pollutants. It's really not so much the case anymore.
Right.
It's this mundane thing. When it rains, and it washes off.
Something that
stuff you don't see.
People don't really think about that often, right? Like you wouldn't think about, okay, when it's raining, we have the biggest risk of a pollutant getting into our rivers versus exactly what you're saying.
It might be shocking to you, but I grew up most of my family pictures are littered with manhole covers and concrete pipe and all. It's still a joke in my family to this day that my dad would stop and take pictures of these things. And really, what you get to, back when you get pictures developed and be like, here's a manhole cover, and then here's a picture of my kid, and
it's like, that's a good looking manhole cover, right?
No, seriously, no, vacations would be halted for a moment.
So we all have to feed our family somehow.
Yeah,
totally. So that's how I kind of parlayed some of my science interests into how I fed my family. But I have a lot of outside interests that tend to be in rather controversial fields.
Love it.
And I'm sure that's some of what we'll get into.
We could just go there now. We can come back to whatever we want, but I mean, this is a conversation, and I texted you last night. I was like, I just want you to pull the curtain back just a little bit. Let's show you kept using that analogy the other day. I was like, why don't you just do that right now? Let's just pull that back. Let's see what Joel has to say.
And I think a good transition into that is that you have interests and explore into experimental energy. Is that what you would call it? Or
so when we think about alternative sources of energy to fossil fuels,
right?
Most people think, oh, well, wind and solar, maybe some geothermal
waves.
All right. Tidal power.
Yeah.
when I talk about breakthrough energy technologies, we're talking about some pretty radical departures from how we think of conventional renewables. And so these might embrace things like cold fusion, which many of us have heard about, and there's a story about how most, when they hear that term, come to like, oh, isn't that like that junk science that was debunked?
Well, was it The Saint, or what was the movie where it's like, you don't believe in all that cold fusion mumbo jumbo, do you? And and then it became this whole war over free energy essentially.
But here's the thing: is cold fusion is very real, and it's been developed to a fairly high art now, and much of our government has had a hand in that development for quite some time. But that's one example. But there's different types of magnetic platforms that could be used for a motor. That has basically tapping in to the background field of energy that some describe as the 0-point field or the quantum flux field.
Is that like dark matter or other side of?
Well, who knows?
I was gonna say maybe.
See, and anyone who says they really know what's going on there, like what is 0-point energy?
Well, when you said that, it's like people are like, well, dark matter's everywhere, but we don't know what it is. Well, then how do you know it's everywhere? Well, because there's nothing there,
or because it interacts with.
But there's something
there,
like gravity. You and I had that conversation about gravity. It's like we know that it does something, and that's it.
But we don't know what
that's
the source. We don't know what the source of it really is. I have some thoughts definitely on gravity and what the source is. And what it does for the universe itself. Maybe that's something we talk about a little bit later. But the breakthrough energy technology end of this is something I've been interested in for a long, long time.
It's an important thing.
And well, it is. And I've had a chance to meet a number of inventors who are brilliant people who've been working oftentimes in very modest labs and workspaces, and having dedicated maybe decades of their lives to coming up with something that really is breakthrough and is fuelless and clean.
With cold fusion, like, what if we've developed it and it's close or whatever, why don't we hear about that?
There's pertaining to fusion in particular, there was I've been reading a couple articles about and I don't know if this is the same as cold fusion in particular, but a fusion power kind of plant that they're starting in France. Have you heard about this? There's that they're into the development of building right now. It's like the biggest nuclear fusion plant to ever be constructed.
That's all generally what's considered hot fusion.
Okay, that's different.
And it's very, very different process. So with classic hot fusion, which they've been working on now for approaching 40 years, and have spent tens of billions of dollars to try to get a single excess watt.
Right. To have a net positive.
And it has not worked very well. The systems are extremely sophisticated, and they operate under very intense magnetic environments, extremely hot temperatures, trying to reach over 1 million degrees.
Whoa.
And they're trying to fuse some very small nuclei together, usually deuterium based, so that it's a form of water, heavy water, trying to fuse those nuclei together to basically release a lot of excess energy, like you would see in a star. So a star is
like
the best
nuclear
example.
Power, same idea.
That's what a star is.
Right.
A star is a big nuclear generator. It's a fusion generator.
Right.
And it produces an enormous amount of heat and light. And in the case of our sun, enough of that to essentially give life to a whole solar system.
Right.
So the hot fusion pursuit is trying to come up with a sustainable way of generating, clean excess power from a hot fusion process. But it's been pretty fruitless
thus far
to this point after all these decades.
So what is
cold
fusion
process?
What does that look like?
It's much simpler. You're basically using you could use just some heavy water and an electrolysis process to do this, and I'm not going to go into a lot of technical detail here,
right.
but it's relatively simple, and the chemistry is getting better and better understood, but it doesn't require intense pressures or intense temperatures. It doesn't require any type of magnetic confinement like what you need with the hot fusion process,
right.
and it's relatively inexpensive. The earliest experiments on this were back in...
So there have been experiments on cold fusion.
Oh, yeah, and there's many variants of it. It's not just one singular design to do it. And I've seen quite a few different variants of this, several of which demonstrated excess heat.
Positive.
So they really are. It is providing what's considered an over-unity effect, where the amount of measurable input energy is exceeded by the measurable output.
Interesting.
And that output, typically in a cold fusion process is in the form of excess heat. And we're good at measuring that. We're good at measuring heat. We're good at measuring electrical output. We're good at measuring mechanical power as an output. What we're not so good at doing is measuring where a lot of the input energy might come from to power one of these novel devices, like a magnetic motor. Okay, where's it coming from? Where's the actual input energy coming from? Because we're really good at measuring the mechanical output of something that's on a rotating platform, like a motor, or the electrical output. If you're hooking that motor up to a generator and you can measure the electrical output, so we're really good at measuring that. But if we're extracting something from, let's say we're extracting energy from the background fabric of the space around the device.
Right, that's really...
Whether we call it the zero-point energy field or the quantum flux field or dark energy or whatever you want to call it, we can theorize on what might be going on, but it's very difficult for us to measure that at this point in time. And I've never been very concerned about that part of it.
Not knowing what it was.
I've been more focused on what's the practical effect of this. What actually works? What can we apply? As I mentioned, my degree is in applied science.
Right.
So I'm not so concerned about theory. I'm concerned about having something that works, provides a benefit to society, whether it's to give us clean energy, whether it's to be able to reduce the costs so that we're able to do more with our pocketbook and for how we have to live, and something that would allow us to change certain aspects of how society runs itself. By running itself, I mean for our infrastructure and do it in a way that frees us up. Because if we had essentially energy that was so abundant and so low cost, that would give us extra degrees of freedom to do other things. Because now we'd be able to take those resources that we've applied for our energy needs, which might just be money, and put them in some other area that might give us all types of new opportunities for new and better ways of doing things, new business opportunities, so much more. And so I'm very much about how do we conduct ourselves as a society that frees us up to tap into the creative potential that we all have. Because I believe that we are here intentionally. I don't think humanity arose as just an accidental species. I definitely believe that there was a creative intent in how humanity came to be.
Prometheus.
And that,
now we're talking.
And that there's meaning behind it. And we've been given certain capacities that are outstanding when they are tapped into and applied appropriately. And having that creator prerogative, which we do. We have a creator prerogative.
We create, that's what you're saying.
Yes, because we can create because we are part of the family of the creator. And so it only makes sense, whereas, each of you gentlemen, Jordan and Curtis and myself, we're all fathers. Mm-hmm. So we've had the experience of being parent to children, and there's nothing we would withhold from them. All that we have is theirs to share. So we teach them, we give them our knowledge, we give them our love, we do all these things so that they can learn how to express their creative potential. So we have creator prerogatives. And much of that comes from the level of the mind that we've been given as a gift, and much of it comes from the fact that we have an organism, with these fingers and these legs and these eyes and all that allows us to do a lot of really neat creative things, including the act of procreation itself.
So I actually have two questions, but I want to back up.
And then I
want to back up just a little bit. When you'd said, like, we don't know what this is, or what's causing this, what makes the energy come out of the cold fusion, and you don't really care. I would agree. I think that's true, but we do live in a society where we just had, like, before all 2020 and everything, there was a backlash about 5G, and people thought that it was causing COVID or causing cancer or whatever. Like, there's some weird things out there, and people don't understand how things work, and so that would be one of my questions. It's like we kind of might have to figure out a little bit what it does, because, like, we have nuclear energy, and we know that if we get too close to that or don't shield it right or whatever, we have radiation. But we didn't at one point, we didn't know about radiation, and could hurt ourselves with that. And we have a Chernobyl thing or whatever. Right. I guess you'd have to do some research into what's creating this to find out that it doesn't harm people long term, right?
Well, generally, what is the harm? What is harmful is the product of the process itself, right? And it might be some of the byproducts as well. So, like in the case of a conventional atomic reactor,
right?
All right. So the nuclear reactors are they're fission reactors, right? So we're taking heavy elements, we're splitting them, releases an enormous amount of energy, but also a lot of those remaining isotopes are very radioactive. They're deadly, and they contaminate virtually everything that they touch.
We saw that in Japan.
Like, we see that.
We're still seeing
Fukushima continues to be a problem here. But that is something that we didn't really anticipate. One of the things we know about science in general is that we tend to lead with the technology ahead of the wisdom of how to best use it.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
So we're always chasing the wisdom wave with the technology. So in energy, it's no different.
No, yeah. That was just one question that came up, because I know that people would question it. Like there was a thing for a while where people thought that they proved that plants don't grow with water that's microwaved, and it's like it's baseless science, but it's
to get to kind of more the core of what you're asking. I think, Jordan, maybe what people would be listening to. I guess maybe, Joel, you would know this, or if you don't, that's totally okay. But I understand the concept of nuclear fusion. I understand the concept of getting energy out from when two molecules or small pieces of material come together and then they release energy. I understand fission, when they separate, they give energy. But with cold fusion in particular, where is the source? Like how do you harness it? Is it two atoms that are coming together, or is it two atoms that are separating with cold fusion? What is the theoretical process that's taking place?
Generally, what you are doing in a cold fusion process is you are fusing two deuterium atoms together.
But not through magnetism.
But they're not being slammed together through these intense pressure and intense heat like you have inside a star.
Okay.
It's being done inside, in most cases, it's being done inside a metal lattice. And what I mean by that is in some of the cold fusion processes, specifically one that's called sonofusion.
Okay.
The deuterium, the heavy water, gets implanted into a metal foil, an actual metal foil, and then there's a a process that accelerates those. It creates a plasma discharge, shoots this hot ionized gas of these deuterium ions into the metal lattice. And then there's a type of, it's thought to be a type of squeezing down of these nuclei together, so they can actually fuse inside that metal lattice, and it forms helium.
Oh,
okay. So we had these deuterium atoms. They fused, form helium, and you get this heat pulse that results in an actual. Well, you can even see it on the metal foil. It'll burst out like a little volcano.
Energy releasing.
Yeah. So you have these little pockmarked sites of where the fusion events occur. And so that was one of the first type of cold fusion processes I saw. In fact, for quite some time, I was the only other person besides the inventor Roger Stringham, who was the inventor of sonofusion. I was the only one who had one of his reactors.
Whoa.
And I would demonstrate. Well, I wasn't demonstrating it as in operating it, but I was showing it kind of as a show and tell. For lots of audiences, and
that's when you were with the new New Energy movement.
Yeah, that's when early in the years of the New Energy movement itself, which was started back in 2003.
Okay.
And that the New Energy movement came about as the brainchild of a former Apollo astronaut, Dr. Brian O'Leary. He was part of the Apollo training program. Actually, was originally scheduled for a Mars mission that was being planned. Back in the '60s, if you can believe that.
Wow.
But that mission got scrubbed. He eventually left the NASA program, so he never did go into space. But he had a lot of other notoriety along the way, and he was able, as with the NASA Apollo astronaut, tag, gave him access to a lot of different inventor workspaces. And Brian himself was an astrophysicist, so he's a well-grounded scientist, and he saw a lot of things that tended to defy conventional physics understandings of energy processes, and he started to write a lot of books about it. And
where would he make those observations at?
Where would he have made the observations?
Yeah,
in the inventor labs themselves.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and so I met Brian. I had become aware of him, and again, this is going back to the early 2000s, and introduced myself to him, and very quickly he said, "Hey, I'd like to invite you to develop this new organization called New Energy Movement, and get this out to the people." So
that's cool.
So I was able to take some of the skills that I had at that time, and Brian started out as the executive head of the organization, and about a year and a half later, I took that over and ran it for the next 11 years.
Wow.
And
so out of all the new energy that's out there currently, out of all the potential options, is there any particular top, 2 or top 1 that you see as the most promising right now? That's actually could come to fruition within our lifetimes?
Yes, absolutely within our lifetimes. So I've seen, as I mentioned earlier, multiple cold fusion based technologies, and in the cold fusion process, there's always a plasma involved in this, and people hear that word plasma, they may not know really what it means, but a plasma is basically a hot ionized gas, and plasma physics is its own branch of physics now. There's a lot of very unique properties that you find in plasma. For one, which is really interesting, is it's very common to find that when you generate a plasma in these processes, you will find the transmutation of metals, actual nuclear transmutation, which is thought to be impossible. It's kind of like alchemy, right?
Right.
But it's happening, and this is so common. It's been measured again and again and again, where you might have certain metals. Maybe you just have like a platinum electrode, and there's a plasma that you're generating around that, and then you go and you measure the elemental composition of that later, and you'll find a number of different metals there that weren't there before.
Iron turns to lead. And like, what's happening?
Well, and it's
lead turns to gold.
Yeah, it happens. Well, okay, so and that's why I could tell you this too. There are some brilliant inventors who you could call them alchemists.
Really?
And not as just a joke.
Yeah.
Because they have refined their science to that degree. And, I've witnessed things in that realm that were, well, I would just call it, one of those days was my most exciting day in science.
Go on.
What I observed there.
Go on.
Well, when you observe the transmutation of metals and actually have the instrumentation to do it, so you see it in real time, and observe energetic processes as well that are way over unity, meaning lots of excess energy coming off the process. That gives me great hope that we'll have these tools. Hopefully sometime soon, and soon could be, a few years to maybe a decade or so, to kind of work these things out where it's not just a proof of principle experiment, but it's actually a commercial product device.
Now, do you think with this type of potential development of alternative energy and or alternative opportunities within energy itself, do you think that there is a push against allowing that sort of new technology to be mainstream?
Yes, of course there is.
Because there's
it's
large
a multi-trillion-dollar industry.
That was going to be
exactly.
That was going to be my next question, because we just we had these debates with the presidential election going on right now, like beforehand, and Trump, his big thing was get Biden to admit that he's going to shut down oil and all that kind of stuff, and he's like, "Oh, did you hear him? That's a huge industry." So like, I do think we should move on to new energies, but at the same time, you disrupt an entire
So even if potentially
system.
there is, so this could be part of the reason that alternative energy has not been as prolific as it has, because there is maybe not necessarily an active fight against it, but
dollars to be lost.
Yes, there's been an active fight against it. I mean, there's tremendous entrenched vested interests in conventional energy. It's a multi-trillion-dollar
oil, coal, even coal to a degree.
Natural gas, oil, coal. I mean, it's a huge industry, and you got to understand that there are quite a number of countries where their whole economic base
is oil.
Is hydrocarbons.
Hashtag Saudi.
So part of the education that I tried to impart as the president of New Energy Movement and all the speaking engagements I had, was to let people know that, look, we have to be empathetic with where people are in how they're living their lives, where their livelihood is coming from.
Sure.
And to say that, oh, well, you're using that dirty oil and all this and that.
Coal companies.
Well, there's a lot of people, in the United States who might have, a couple of acres in their family where maybe they're pumping a few barrels of oil, that come out of the ground every couple days or whatever, and that's allowing, mom or grandma or whoever to actually get by.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people
that's a good point.
like that. There are hundreds of thousands of jobs just in the fueling stations across the United States.
Right.
And then you think about the convenience store that's attached to that fueling station, and all of the commerce that goes on there, all the truck stops.
Yeah.
That are there, the hotels along the way for truckers who are using fossil fuel to move goods here and there. They got to stop somewhere.
Everywhere.
There's an enormous economy that when you look at it, so many people's livelihoods are tied into fossil fuels.
Right.
To just say, well, we're just going to do away with that, and then the world's going to be a utopia, and that is so
there's a transition that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where, what was it, Dan Chang?
Andrew Yang,
his concept was he's saying like this is a foreseeable change, that if we do turn away from fossil fuels, especially for semi-truck drivers, or if it
and
becomes
automate the
drivers, we're going to need to have some type of way of supplementing these people or helping them get new jobs or something along the way.
Okay, and this is a good point, because one of the things about the breakthrough energy technologies is that when these things are available as an actual commercial embodiment,
right,
where we have a device that we can go buy as a consumer. So the retrofitting of the auto vehicle fleet, that is something that would take 10 to 20 years to do. And so there you would have a whole new economy for workers who could use the technology to retrofit vehicles and industrial applications and all of this. And that becomes an opportunity for derivative businesses.
Sure, you evolve and you
so all these things can happen. So there's retraining that can happen. I am not a big fan of this universal basic income idea for multiple reasons. But one fundamental reason is this, is as men, and I'll just speak to men because I'm one, we need to work in order for us to maintain our dignity as men. When you see men who are not working and are reduced to begging, whether it's begging on a corner or essentially begging for something from the state to sustain them. And I mean when they're capable of work, but yet they are begging for a handout.
Sure.
When you are taking the fruit of someone else's labor, all men recognize that that man has sacrificed his dignity. And that's not good. That is not good for us to do that. Because we will, when we get to that point where as men, we lose our own self-respect and our dignity, it just becomes a really fast and slippery slope to other conduct that just becomes very destructive.
Now, I heard someone put it well once, that men are like pickup trucks. They drive straight with a heavy load.
Yeah, but I would also say, like, when you work, I mean, work could look different too. Like, it could be the wife could be the one earning the money, and the husband could be working at home, taking care of the family too. Like, there's other ways of, but that's work.
But what I mean is when you are doing no productive work, and you are taking the fruits of someone else's labor, which is what a universal basic income, because it'd be a tax on the others to provide that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so and it's no different when you see, for me, I know I always, just feel something wrong in my heart when I see a healthy young man on a street corner, with his dog next to him, and he's begging. And I want to say, young man, don't you see what you're doing to yourself here?
So you're not looking down on him. You're saying, you're seeing the potential in him.
I'm seeing here's someone who could lift himself up by recognizing how he has so damaged his dignity as a man. And it's.
I think there's a lot of situations for sure where that is applicable. And of course, there's always exceptions in situations where people like severe mental psychosis, psychiatric issues, or someone's schizo and they can't literally function.
And I'm not talking about
but
that.
you're talking about capable,
when someone is capability.
Yeah.
And now that capability might even be this. And so let's say someone is fairly low functioning, maybe because of some mental compromise or a physical compromise. But generally, there is something they can do productive.
Yeah.
Maybe it is to plant. Maybe it is to harvest. Maybe it's to weed.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you might see where I'm going with this. We have an awful lot of people who are living on the streets now. All right. And like in the city where I live in Portland, there are been for quite some time, how do we address this problem compassionately to help people who have been displaced, or they have some other issues and they're just kind of living on the street or along the street. Well, I would go back to this principle about if men are not doing anything productive and they are just being given essentially a handout, all right, it compromises their dignity. What if instead of us organizing things where we're just like giving them stuff, no matter what that is, give them shelter, give them food, give them whatever, why don't we provide the opportunity? Maybe it's on a plot of land that can be productive for growing food. And I grew up on a farm. I know what it means to have your hands in the dirt to grow stuff, what that feels like, the connection with the soil and with the food that comes from that, from the work that you put in to get the fruit from the land. That is a very almost sacred experience.
Yeah. And
there's a value that comes with that and a connection to the Creator that comes through that is very healing. And I could see if a lot of these displaced men who are living on the street, if they had an opportunity to be in a situation where they could grow food and do it cooperatively with each other, and grow their skills and actually compete with who's gonna be the most bountiful in this, it will uplift them.
Yeah. What you're describing is like an active learning environment. It's like somebody's earning something. They're learning a new trade. They're competing with other people with ideas and new processes. And this is how I do it. This is a more succinct way.
I think that could work if you have a system where you have. I think that's still,
a farm is just an example. I mean, it could be anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
it could be many different. There's
some places.
That still requires though a form of social, a social network or a social assistance, because you're having to have some type of organization that helps facilitate these people.
I think it could become
even if it's not UBI, it's still a financial.
There is there's an investment in there, yes, and part of the analysis of what makes the most sense for this. Like in Portland, they're talking about, well, we take this very expensive, Portland real estate, build expensive structures, and we're going to, give people, essentially a place to live.
Low-income homes.
It's a very expensive way of doing it. And now we're going to have those who live in Portland going to have to pay this very sizable taxes in order to subsidize that.
So you're saying I still want to help them, but you want it to be an investment instead of just ongoing, never seeing any return.
Yeah, I think there's better ways of doing this where if you did this in rural areas where there was land available that was arable and productive, and you have the connection established between the men, and again I'm just talking to men here because I'm a man, not to exclude women, but as a man.
Yeah. Same ideas could be applied.
When we have that experience of hands in the soil, growing something, we're seeing the fruits of our labor, we're harvesting that, now we have something to share, we have something to do. Men grow and heal from that. And this is something that I would speak to the women here for a moment. I don't think that the natural compassionate heart of a woman, which always is seeking to comfort, naturally seeks to comfort.
Generally.
Yes. Generally. Mostly. That
I've met a few. I'd question that.
They don't understand how important the dignity aspect is for a healthy man. They don't understand that, and that's why I'm speaking to this part. Right.
Well, you're a guy, so you can speak to.
This kind of concept though has already happened a little bit in Oregon, but unfortunately, it was affiliated with someone a little bit not state run, but a little religiously ran. That took place in Eastern Oregon, the Rajneeshi camp.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the Bhagwan here.
They took plenty of homeless people off the streets, had them run their.
That didn't work out well. They got them.
Well, actually, it did work out well.
No, they found them for the militia. That's when it all tanked.
For a while, until they started throwing salmonella all over the place, right?
That's true.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
No, but
here,
I do think that there is a lot of potential, even for homeless individuals and people that are seeking. There's a lot of potential for if we have a structure where we start developing new.
I could see that happening in a lot of other
technology. Then we could use people.
Farming is a great example, and I don't even think it's a bad application. But there's also like areas of tech or whatever that could also be applied. Same thing, and to do the same thing, like creating or people bring things in and you fix, and you're training people to work on cars, computers, things like that. Like same type of deal.
But then there's always going to be people, of course, that won't want to do it, and then they're choosing that themselves to be.
So in this
situation.
So in traditional societies, you don't work, you don't eat.
Yeah,
sure.
It's very effective at motivating people to do something productive,
especially in more, and I think in smaller communities even.
Yeah.
Like if you're not working or you're not chipping in, you're not getting
like tribal communities.
Yeah, tribal. Yeah. But something that's talking about new energy a little bit. Are you familiar with Bob Lazar?
Sure.
And Element 115.
Yep.
And how was it actually not discovered prior to the 2000s, or they had not actually created the element prior to the early 2000s?
That was a hard switch.
But no, this is something I've been really thinking about.
Okay. Well, I can answer that succinctly. I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Oh.
Do I think Bob Lazar is credible? Yes, I do. Do I believe that he saw something and worked on something that is a very high technology, perhaps from a civilization not of this planet? Yes.
So, have you watched the documentary on
yes,
Netflix?
I've been 20 feet from Bob Lazar. It's
that's
yeah,
wild. At some conference or
Denny's. It was just at Denny's. Yeah, he ordered a grand slam.
I've spoken at a number of different conferences, and that where I'd be talking about breakthrough energy technology, other people would be talking about ET and UFOs and all of this stuff.
Well, I mean that's probably a good segue as well. I mean, you've spoken at what was it, the UFO mega conference? Is that
down in Laughlin, Nevada this past February.
Right.
But that was actually on a different. That was on a different topic, though. It's funny. The producer of that conference, a really wonderful gentleman named Bob Brown, called me and said, "Hey Joel, we'd love to have you come down to our UFO mega conference and give a presentation." And I said, "Well, what would you like me to talk about?" And he says, "Well, what you normally talk about, which is breakthrough energy technologies." And I thought about it for just a couple seconds, and I said, "I don't want to do that, Bob.
I'm bored with that.
I don't want to do that. I've already done that." And I said, I want to talk about something different here, and here's what it is. I want to address this question: is there a universal religion among the advanced inhabited planets?
Whoa, that's a whole different topic there. So
and he loved that idea, and so that's what I presented on.
For how long? So I know the answer to this, but everyone needs to hear this. How long was this lecture on this?
2.5 hours, actually. I was allotted 90 minutes, and I went the 90 minutes, and then the next speaker was due up, and the audience said, "You got to go on." So they gave me a whole nother segment.
Wow.
To do this.
2.5 hours.
So a universal. So let me
unified.
No, I'll say it again. My presentation addressed this question: is there a universal religion among the advanced inhabited planets?
Of which we're not included, right?
We are not an advanced.
We're
inhabited.
That's key to that story. Or to that subject.
That is part of the story about the assumptions of what constitutes an advanced inhabited planet.
So to you, what would quantify a advanced planet?
Well, one you can view it in terms of technological development.
Mm-hmm.
You can quantify it in terms of social development. And I think spiritual development is another one. And generally, they probably all go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But I think kind of most fundamentally, people think, well, an advanced planet, they'd have the capability to travel interstellar space. They'd be able to get out of their solar system.
Yeah.
All right.
Which
and go somewhere else.
we barely did with a rock.
Right. Yeah. And they undoubtedly, if they could travel interstellar space, they would not be using chemical propellants and rocket ships as their mode of transportation. They'd be using advanced energy and propulsion technology so that they could travel, probably superluminal.
What's it called? Velocity. There's different stages where it's like you utilize all of your planet's energy, then you utilize all
type
your
1,
sun's,
type 1, type 2
2
civilizations.
Yeah, exactly.
So
type
we
1,
have,
type 2. We're not even
Michio
to type.
Kaku talks about that.
Right. So are we to type 1 yet? Are we?
No,
we're not even to type 1, right?
No, we're between 0 and 1.
We're in between 0 and
0.25.
Yeah, 0, a type 1 would be able to harness the energy resources at a planetary level.
Okay.
And then type 2 would be to harness the energy of a star. Type
That's a big deal.
Type 3 would be a big jump to
right.
So when we had talked about this and you had brought this up, like my first question I think to you was, how on earth, with something that like obviously we don't have contact with these other planets that I know of. Maybe you do. I don't.
Well, I
don't.
think that is an incorrect statement.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
it's cool.
Good.
We can go to that. I'm glad you said
TikTok.
That may be another topic.
I'm glad
Tic-tacs,
you
right?
bit onto that.
The Tic Tacs. We'll go on to that.
But it was. I think it
It's
was
under-
this week. It showed up. Like I was reading through some articles, and it showed up that NASA said that they estimate there's 300. Was it 300? 300 million habitable planets exist.
In our universe,
They've just said
in
that.
our galaxy.
But then when we were talking the other day, I said, so what if we've had contact? Because we kind of got into that conversation a little bit. We've got to have some tech that we haven't seen, and if that's the case, is that why? My question to him was, is that why NASA just kind of disappeared for a while?
Ooh.
Well, what your question really revolves around is, are there two different space programs? The pedestrian space program and then the really hot, juiced up, good tech program. I think that's absolutely the case. I think there's the pedestrian program that is the NASA
burns rockets,
chemical propelled rockets, burning hydrogen and oxygen, and that's what you're doing. SpaceX, all of that, still same thing, just rockets. And then I think there's the real space program,
Space Force,
where we maybe that's another topic, but where we can do Star Trek type of.
And you think that's currently taking place?
I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I think it is, and and that's a hot topic in some other circles. But.
Well, do you think that the development of Space Force was part of the reasoning, or do you think the development of Space Force was because we have that technology now?
Well, I think there's two levels to that question. One, we have many different nations who are trying to establish themselves as a space power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, the clear ones you got, Russia, China.
Sure.
Right. But you have other nations who are participating in space. India, Israel. And there'll be others who want to get in that bandwagon because there's so many resources to be explored, whether it's on asteroids or the moon or other planets or whatever. I mean, it's a vast opportunity for new resources. But at the same time, you have to heavily consider the likelihood that there are many, many, many other planets that have intelligent species who are advanced beyond Earth humanity, and that some of those at least have established contact here. In fact, may have had a role even in the seeding of the life on this planet, which I think there's a story there too. But
I think that makes sense.
That's
what evidence would you say there is towards not towards the seeding, but towards the fact that.
Well, I'm going to go back to the space. I want to finish up the Space
fine.
Force question there. So
I'm jumping ahead.
if you have a need like our country does, we have a need to protect our space interests right now, because we've got, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of satellites up there, whether military or commercial satellites or what have you there, and all of the other aerospace engineering that also, provides a lot of jobs, a lot of technological advancement, things like that. We have a huge investment in protecting our space resources. But there is this other level where we have to be vigilant about, at least our ability to monitor our space around this planet, because we can't assume that others who might be coming from more advanced planets are coming here just with an olive branch and singing Kumbaya, and here's a bag of Doritos, because we understand you guys love Doritos. It's possibly they come for resources,
right?
And they're willing to just trade for them straight up, ethically or whatever. Might be some who come for resources, including perhaps genetic resources.
That's fascinating.
Such as DNA of other species, including human. That where they may not be so interested in being fair and ethical,
diplomatic.
Yeah, they might treat the species on Earth, including our brand of Earth humanity, the way we would insects that we see,
or that we treat like the Amazon.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just like, well, we don't care if there's people here.
Right.
We need these trees. Sorry, we want the palm oil.
So we can't guarantee even though they may be technologically advanced, we can't make the assumption that they are ethically advanced or spiritually advanced.
Or peaceful.
Right. Well, yeah.
Or culturally.
Yeah. And just because you have the capacity as a human, and I think there are many different types of humans. I think there's Earth humanity, and then there's humanity on each of these other inhabited planets. But just because we have the capacity for ethical behavior, capacity for high technology, the capacity for spiritual enlightenment, which certainly many individuals in Earth humanity demonstrate all of those capacities, okay, that doesn't mean that you still don't have some really bad characters within that population who can play havoc on a planet. And we are seeing some of those individuals with high technological resources who have advanced education, and who have opportunities to do tremendous good, who are doing tremendous harm.
Yeah.
We're seeing that on our planet right now, and we're seeing it being played out in a number of different stages.
Right.
Here.
So you're saying, like, why wouldn't that be the case for other advanced? They don't advance past.
Right. Well, and I would
faults.
say this. There's good reason to believe that beings who are much higher than the human order of being have used their tremendous endowments of intellect, spiritual understanding, perhaps instantaneous travel, who knows what, who have rebelled against what was the purpose for their order of being, and caused tremendous havoc, if maybe on a universal scale, if not just a planetary scale.
So do you think that as multiple potential alien species, do you think that they would all share a basic genetic makeup as us, or do you think that there would be multiple different platforms, or not carbon based, multiple different types of life throughout those different? If you're going to the level of talking about their religion or their beliefs, have you thought about, is there a different basic structure of these beings?
So I think we should just go in terms of probabilities.
Yeah.
Okay, what do we know? We know that carbon-based organisms are not just possible, but they are.
Right, they are.
They just are. And we know that, as we, go to other planets within our solar system, and what we see on asteroids, there are organic molecules, right? So there's carbon,
yeah.
carbon, and there's water. We're finding water everywhere.
Moon, Mars.
So when you have those, you have the building blocks for organic life. So whether there's a possibility to have sentient silica-based life or based on various metals or who knows what, that's kind of like speculative. But if we just go on the premise that there is organic life, and so this organism that we have as the human form, a head, 2 eyes, 2 of these, 2 feet, all that kind of thing, a brain and procreative, male, female. It's reasonable to think that this is also a pattern that is used on other planets as well for its pinnacle biological species. Because we are the pinnacle species here on this planet. I know some like to think, well, no, it's dolphins, it's whales, and all that. Well, no, it's not. Okay, it's just not, because they don't travel into space. They don't,
they don't have control.
They don't have control.
We would see more of that, but if you follow a pattern, like you can look out and you can see there's a pattern of our solar system out other places. Why wouldn't there be other patterns other places?
And so to address your question and wrap that part up, it's likely that the closer planets are to our planet, the more similar the human pattern type will be. Now, probably the further away you go, maybe there are more fingers. Maybe instead of a 2-lobe brain, they have a 3-lobe brain. Maybe instead of their eyes, looking the way ours do, maybe they're large and have, huge pupils.
Yeah.
Or maybe they have no hair on their body. But there's different things. But I think the human type, the way we are, has many different variations, and those variations probably become more differentiated the further we move out from any specific.
Even like on our planet, we're seeing human microevolutionary changes within our own system. Like we're seeing that many more people now have started to evolutionarily change, and they're not growing wisdom teeth as often now.
Yeah.
So wisdom teeth are phasing out. There's certain tendons in certain areas of the body that have actually started evolutionary or phasing out.
Go to the Netherlands and see how daggone tall everyone is there now.
Right.
I mean, it's just like everyone is, every guy is 6 foot 6.
Size, yeah.
And
hang out there for a while.
most of the women there now are.
But we have it depends on what your beliefs are, I understand. But we have theories that people have evolved from apes or from other mammal base, and so perhaps there are other carbon-based life forms that evolved past what our current life forms have evolved past, and so that could form a different way of appearing and identifying and developing too, I assume. Everything's an assumption to a degree with our knowledge, because none of us have. I don't know if you, Joel, yourself have experienced any type of extraterrestrial encounters or evidence yourself.
Well, I've had a quite a large number of sightings of aerial phenomena that I could not explain as a scientist what I've seen, but I can tell you that if you ever watched the Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, and the researchers that they have on there, the talking heads. I mean, most of those guys I know personally, and
the big hair guy, I can't remember his name, but
have spoken at various conferences with these crowds.
Golly.
Quite a few of them are friends of mine as well.
I want to go to these conferences with you.
But the kind of the interplay has been the energy side, which always had been my focus.
Sure.
Has a very clear complementary pairing with the advanced propulsion. Okay, so if you've got UFOs, undoubtedly you've got advanced energy and advanced propulsion.
Sure, that makes sense.
All right, so they're kind of you got one, you got the other there, and I had. My first experience of a UFO was on our apple farm outside of Cincinnati, back this was in the early 70s, and our whole family was just having barbecue out there out back, and we could see this, what looked like 3 colored lights, just these 3 spherical lights just together, and we're watching them, and they just stayed static for about 20 minutes, and then they separated into three different colors, and then they all just took off. And it was interesting because at that time, in that summer, there was in the front page of the Cincinnati newspaper lots of accounts of UFO sightings. So there was a real UFO flap going on in the Ohio Valley that summer.
Really?
And it was being reported, in the mainstream newspapers here. And so it was a really curious time. And then later, I guess that to me kind of ingrained in me that, okay, this phenomena is real.
Yeah. And
I always kind of accepted that there's life all throughout this universe. And I'm a prayerful man. I definitely know there is God. Even as a scientist, I absolutely know there is God. And so, why would the Creator only just have one planet inhabited? It would make no sense, because the whole sharing of life is what brings us joy. And again, we each know this as fathers.
Right.
We know the joy that our children bring to us. So why would the Creator, the primal Creator, just restrict that sharing of joy to just one small little blue-green planet in this far corner of the cosmos? Undoubtedly, it would be all over the place. So I never had any issue with the fact that there's ET and UFOs.
It doesn't break your faith.
Oh, no, absolutely not. If anything, it says all the more for the glory of the primal Creator, because again, why would it be limited?
Yeah.
To one planet? It wouldn't be. And as we see all these planets in the Goldilocks zones,
yeah,
science is catching up with the spiritual philosophy. Okay, because it's not incompatible at all. The idea of God, so let's just use the word God, of God having created life, even human life, on millions or trillions of planets. Okay, there's nothing that inhibits the Creator from doing that. In fact, I think it is so likely that is the case.
Well, I've heard a lot of scientists recently, because a lot of scientists for a while either claim to be atheists or whatever, and that's fine. That's their own prerogative to choose that. But what I've heard said is not fully the step to what you said is like, I believe in God as a scientist. Obviously, there's a few that are like that, but most that I've listened to now have said, I look at all this and I think of the chance of it just being a chance, and I think it at least needed order. Like, and I'm like, okay, that's like a good stepping stone, I guess. Yeah. Like, if to get to this infinitesimal like outcome, there had to be something that pointed it towards it, and that's all you can say. At least you're being, in my book, you're being a little bit more reasonable.
Well, Jordan, as you may recall from our conversation the other day, as a scientist and being well acquainted with the scientific ego.
Yeah.
And it's sizable.
Yeah.
All right. So
I can imagine.
So the like in professionals in other fields.
Yeah.
So often the greatest fear of that professional, it's to be the fear of being ridiculed and ostracized from one's peers is the most devastating scenario that someone can think of who has that ego. All right. So they are very, very reluctant to share anything of their personal belief that is counter to the ego narrative that they think sustains their career and their social network. So I can tell you this for a fact.
Yeah.
I've heard scientists confide in me one-on-one as a man to another man after I had established trust with them, that even though in a group they would absolutely deny that they believed that there were life on other planets to the human level.
Yeah.
Okay, something more than maybe just, bacteriological life,
right,
or whatever. And that they believe definitely that there's a creator and that the universe shows total signs of intelligent design.
Right.
All right. But they were willing to speak of that in a person-to-person conversation. All right. But they would totally deny it if they were in a group of other scientists. And see, here's the irony there. You may have a group of scientists who are all going, ha ha ha, those stupid Christians or whatever, you know what I mean? Or just kind of castigating those who have a religious faith as being of lower intellect or what have you, even though several of them in that group actually are Christians. Or have some other religious faith or whatever.
It's not unlike our current culture, like where people are like afraid to say who they voted for, unless
exactly.
you voted for the right person.
Exactly. It's so what it is. It's an immaturity to be so scared to speak your truth here, and it's such a shame because it really squanders so much of the potential for creativity, for a life of purpose and meaning, for satisfaction in one's life, for the reconstitution of a high trust society. Our society has become a low trust society,
as this week has shown.
It's happened so quickly too.
So quickly.
And that was not the case a generation or two ago.
Right.
It was at a higher trust level.
Right.
You could generally trust, the media. There was higher trust in government. You generally you had more contact with your neighbors.
I would say it's more instead of trust, I would say more confidence. It probably is a better way of explaining
No, it's trust.
You think it's trust?
It's trust. It really is, because and the fundamental thing is, do I even believe what you're saying to be authentic?
Yeah.
And that has degraded. It's so obvious, and that's why, to a large degree, we're in this real crisis. The word crisis is overused, but I would say we have a crisis of trust.
Yeah.
We're seeing it being played out, right now in this election scenario and all that kind of thing. But we see it in so many other areas, and it just adds so many layers of stress. Just think, if we were really a high trust society, would we need a password for every damn thing that we do on the internet? I mean, you see,
that's true.
Do you need LifeLock? Do you need whatever the home security
Simply
system?
Safe?
Yeah, Simply Safe. All of this stuff.
All the ones you hear advertised on mainstream.
So many levels of complication and stress to our society that takes a toll on us physically, shortens our lives, makes us immunocompromised because of the stress due to a low trust society. And that is that is in evidence with the examples I gave of the scientists who they'll say one thing in person to you when they trust you,
right,
versus what they'll say in a group of peers because they're so afraid of not having the narrative that they believe is shared by the whole group when it's really not shared.
Yeah.
So have any of those scientists, I know you've mentioned the pretty cool story about the lights and then the situations that other scientists have told you about, have any of them told you any stories specifically that you've been like, oh, that blows my mind, like I can't believe this?
No. I'll just tell you this just honestly. I've had so many conversations with people who have shared some of their own personally profound experiences, and I've had so many of my own on different levels, whether they're metaphysical experiences or like the UFO type, and technological experiences, like my greatest day of science. I tell people when they come, and I have a lot of people who do open up to me because they know that I'm just a straight up guy. I don't I don't care what anyone thinks about me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I could just move forward without that baggage, and I think people like that So they trust me. They'll speak to me about their experiences, and they'll say, "Oh boy, I don't want to blow you away here. I don't want you to just kind of like all of a sudden fade." And I'll just say, "There is nothing you can say to me that would surprise me.
Wow.
So just go for it." And then they'll just lay out their story. Now, a lot of them are fascinating stories, right? But they don't cause me to. It doesn't end up turning my paradigm upside down, where I have to shut down in order, as a defense mechanism, to protect my own ego or psyche, or however you want to characterize.
Which it seems like we so easily see happen in our current society.
That's unfortunate. Whether it's not just like scientific kind of concept or
it seems like it affects it all the way up to that point,
yeah.
but it's even on a personal level.
Right.
If it affects us all the way down to that, imagine like given the world that you have, going through the cold fusion, going through like these planets that at a higher advanced, the theories behind that and stuff like that. Like how much are we missing as a society just because of the trust?
Well, boiling down
in our progression,
boiling down to being open-minded is a big part of it too, right? Because if you don't trust somebody, you're not going to be as open-minded about the situation or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Something that is interesting as far as looking at our planet in particular, I wanted to know if you've kind of looked into this at all, is potential past human advancements that we have forgotten, such as Göbekli Tepe, where we've seen this ancient kind of not industrial, but structures that were built out of type of technology that
megalithic
they didn't
structure.
Yeah,
10,000 years ago.
10,000 years ago that we didn't believe humans had the technology to construct that type of material. Right. Have you had any type of interesting conversations or developments?
Oh, absolutely.
About ancient technology.
So at that, for instance, at that same conference, the UFO mega conference.
I'm gonna go pee real quick.
Go for it,
because I did hear this part of it, and I don't want to miss anything he says. But this part we did talk about.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So at that conference, there were the 3 leading pyramid archaeologists on the planet, all there at the same time. So there was the leading authority on the Egyptian pyramids, the leading authority on the Central and South American pyramids, and the leading archaeologist on the Bosnian pyramid. And for those who aren't aware of the
I know nothing about the Bosnian.
This may be the most fascinating of them all. This is the largest pyramid that's been uncovered anywhere on the planet so far. Much more massive than the Great Pyramid at Giza.
Wow.
It's being excavated as a public project. A nonprofit has been set up in Bosnia to make it so that volunteers can come from around the world and actually can participate in the excavation and in the ongoing discoveries here. And the leading archaeologist, Dr. Sam, and I would butcher his last name, but Dr. Sam, if you just Google Bosnian pyramid, you'll see him. He's just an amazing man, great-hearted individual, just so passionate about this adventure of discovery and the implications for our better understanding of history, if not origins, as well. Because we could talk a little bit later, maybe, about the topic of origins, history, and destiny, which is a big topic, of course.
Interesting.
But anyway, the Bosnian pyramid. There are so many discoveries going on there. They actually have measured an active microwave beam is coming out of the top of this thing.
Glad I was here for that.
Did you hear about? He was talking.
Didn't hear about that part.
There's a Bosnian pyramid.
No, I heard about that.
Oh, okay.
I knew about that.
There are I believe 5 different levels below the pyramid.
What?
They have the material itself that is the material out of which the blocks are constructed is an artificial concrete.
Really?
It is an artificial concrete that has higher hardness and lower moisture characteristics than any terrestrial concrete formulation.
My goodness.
So they're better at it than us.
And he has been dating this somewhere between like 15 and 30,000 years old.
Wow.
So who built that?
Wow.
Who built that?
So maybe you already probably didn't, because I wasn't gone that long. But you had said when you met him, this was when you spoke on the unified religion. Is this when you met this guy?
Yeah.
Okay. You said to me in a different conversation that there were some things that you were talking about that answered some questions about their research with that pyramid. Can you go into that?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, I'm a prayerful man,
mm-hmm.
and I take that to be the explanation for how any one of my days might go well. Is that I'm purposefully aligning what I do with the guidance that is provided to me by some presence of the Creator.
Yeah.
And I would just say that, my understanding and my experience is that our Creator has imparted a fragment of the creative spirit that is in each one of us, in our minds. It's available to everyone. It's not like, only people who practice this or believe in that. No, it's available to every human being.
Right.
And at a certain point in time, perhaps we make the decision to start a relationship with the very personal presence of God with us. And I can just say this as someone who always has been experimental in the way I've lived my life. I have an experimental nature. That's why I'm a scientist. I've always done this. I've tried to kind of push the envelope on different things. And I just know that this is something that is real. It works. It's potent, and it leads to a life that can be more purposeful. And events arrange themselves in these amazing series of synchronicities when we align ourselves with that presence and that guidance. So at any rate, it was the nudge that I got from what I would just say is that inner presence that caused me to not accept the invitation for that to present about breakthrough energy at that conference.
Right.
But rather to present on this topic of, is there a universal religion among advanced inhabited planets? During that conference itself, the material that I had researched and prepared, and I invested several hundred hours in preparing this presentation, that the exposure that I had to certain information as I prepared that talk contained little puzzle pieces that I was able to contribute to those pyramid researchers, so that when they were giving their presentations and they said, here's something that has been a real mystery to us, and when we can solve this is really going to help us advance our understanding of the history and all this and that. Well, in a couple of instances, I was able to give them the missing puzzle piece in there because of this other research I had been doing here. So I think that if we had as a planetary civilization, and if we had a better understanding and open-mindedness to our origins and to our actual history, not some revisionist history, but our actual history, and had open-mindedness to our probable destiny that goes beyond just living out a perhaps 90-year physical existence and then but that we actually are beings endowed with a soul that is not physical, that it is enduring, that it's personal, and that it is comprised not only of the best of our human experience, but also is blended with aspects of that divine presence that's been gifted to each of us by the Creator. and that soul composite moves on to other adventures so far beyond what we can imagine. It has nothing at all to do with, when we leave here, if I'm good, I'm in so-called heaven, and I'm just going to be kind of like hanging around, singing praises, and having the beatific vision, or
playing
whatever.
We're in a bed playing a harp.
It's so far beyond.
Right.
It's so far beyond that. Because, what do we know that provides us joy? Okay, what provides us the most joy is sharing.
Yeah,
relationship, creation, and service. That's what brings us joy. So this ongoing adventure of destiny is designed to increase our experiential knowledge of the cosmos and how it's comprised and how it operates on all different levels: physical, spiritual, mental, what the interplay of cosmic meanings are, the interplay of celestial values that go far beyond just what our earthly notions of meanings and values are, to come into to ever increasing experience of what our true creator prerogatives are. Not just here in the way we think of, we got procreative prerogatives because we each have children. We've seen that works. We know we can be inventive here because, we can come up with inventions and all that kind of thing, so we can be technological. But there's so many other layers of the creator prerogatives, that I believe that ultimately we go through a universal training process on ever ascending levels of experience that ultimately prepares us to be able to participate in the creation of worlds and administering those worlds.
That's pretty sweet. That'd be pretty neat.
Yeah.
So you were talking about it's like kind of like, I guess this is kind of like mixes everything together. It's another theory that theory.
Wait, before, are you going away from this topic?
Not really.
Okay.
Because
I had a question.
It's very, very similar. Well, ask yours first, because mine might be a little bit off.
Well,
because it's backing up a little bit. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Anyway,
go for it.
So going on the concept of the blueprint, kind of having the blueprint of the creator, kind of the ability to create. Do you think that with the previous kind of, I believe that there was technology, I think, that we've lost, or ability to create in ways that we no longer know how to do. Do you think that technology or that way of thinking was lost during a specific period of time or during a certain occurrence? Or do you think it's just something that we have neglected and forgot, such as, I know people have theorized about, a great flood at one point that perhaps killed a lot of people. There's the situation, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Sphinx very much, and the theories of water damage that on the base of it. Is there some correlation that you've kind of theorized about water damage, the Sphinx, maybe Göbekli Tepe, everything just kind of went up and gone and that knowledge was lost? Or why aren't we having that capability that we perhaps had in the past?
Okay, so I believe that there have been several different epochs in human history from our origins where we arose in the biological capacity with a physical form, because we do have an organism, a physical organism. When that form had become sufficiently ripe, let's just call it ripe, there was now the capacity to receive a spiritual endowment that gave us the capacity to make a moral choice and to know the Creator. Okay? And that was differentiated from what the highest animals had. Okay. All of the animal kingdom has some form of mind. Mm-hmm. Yep. And we see that, if you look at a cockroach clearly is not at the same level of mind as a horse, right? They're
close,
there
but
is.
separated.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
But we
Right. There's a different evolutionary development of their brain.
but there is an evolution of development.
Absolutely.
And it's in these various capacities. But mind does exist in all of these different levels, but the capacity to have a soul does not. Now I know some people would say that, well, my cat, my dog, my
They're
horse,
soulful.
has a soul and all that, and I would say, well, no, they have mind, and they have an ability to learn from their experience, and so they do express through that gained experience the appearance of a personality, because part of the experience of the pet is of the owner and what goes on in that nice intimate relationship between the owner. But it's the mind capacity to translate that experience into behavior, but it's not the same thing as a soul. We have at the human level this inherent capacity to make a moral choice. An animal cannot do that. We have the ability to have metaphysical experiences of the spirit level, and animals don't have that.
Well, I would say too, like if you remove an animal from the person, the animal does not experience the same thing that it does with the person. But if you remove a person from the animal, they continue as a soulful person. What you're saying, it makes sense. Like the experience with the animal is because it's interacting with the owner.
But would you say then that a consciousness is equivalent to having a soul then? Like a self-awareness is what is the distinguishing factor. Then at that point, that's where a soul...
No, that's mind. So consciousness...
I see where you're going.
Where you're going. Consciousness is an attribute of mind, because the animals are conscious that they have a body, for instance. All right, they are conscious of that. That's a mind attribute.
Okay.
Now, are they self-reflective?
Right.
No, because animals don't have guilt.
So being self-reflective?
Yeah. Animals show no awareness of carrying or demonstrating rumination on past thought. So they don't have egos. The animals don't have the ego like we do. Which an ego can. We all have one, and we can harness it if we're doing it well, or we can let it run amok, as so many do. But we're all challenged with the ego. But the animals don't have ego, and they are not really self-reflective. But they are conscious, and they have a mind. They are able to have relationships, and they do. And we see among the mammals, especially, and certainly among, say birds, and maybe even some
apes.
Some marine creatures. Well, those are mammals, but you see some fishes and octopus or whatever. They can be quite social and even have these endearing bonds with their young. So that's a fairly high capacity, because social, the social behaviors, that's pretty highly conscious, but it's still not indicative of soul, because having a soul is the capacity for immortal life consciously, where you retain your consciousness and it's progressive beyond the body, and again, the soul imparts us the ability to know our Creator and to make a moral choice, and through the choosing of the qualities of truth and beauty and goodness. And those who are familiar with Christian philosophy are very familiar with those terms in general, because those are considered, three very, very essential divine qualities: truth, beauty, and goodness. So a person who aligns their decisions and their actions with those three attributes, truth, beauty, and goodness. They're going to have a very progressive life, meaning they are going to be growing their soul, their capacity to be a service, not just here on this planet and in this material life, but in the ongoing life to come. And we all have that capability, as beings with a real soul and with a fragment of the Creator indwelling our mind.
So I might be making a jump, but would you theorize that the reason there's been several instances, or not like a extinction level events, but several instances where those humans have evolved past the human body, and that's why we have not had that technology continue forward throughout the time?
No, what I think happened is so let's just say that humanity arose 1 million years ago.
Sure.
On this planet.
Yeah.
Let's just use
throw it out there.
Okay.
It's a round number.
So at a certain point, and let's even say, well, it doesn't even matter this, but although I do think that life was seeded here on this planet by other beings who came here, and that it was actually their mission and purpose was to seed life not just here but on other planets as well, as part of an intelligent plan. Okay, and so at a certain point after humanity arises and now is the pinnacle species and has been endowed with these spiritual qualities, to make the moral choice and to know the Creator. Now we have revelation to humanity of some representatives of the divine, representatives of God. Okay. Not necessarily God, but higher orders of being than the human order, who in being true to their commission of service is to bring information to humanity to help progress our civilization.
Protect.
So that would perhaps
part of our conversation kind of went there a little bit.
Perhaps, but let's say it was at least to show some rudimentary technology, might be home building. And I don't mean just like having
or pyramids,
like making a nest of leaves in a tree like a gorilla might do. It's not that. It's making blocks, making bricks, making mortar, that's a technology. Yeah. Okay, yeah, something like that, or cutting trees down and shaping them to make a log structure or what have you. Actually, the home building technology. It might be agriculture, animal husbandry, rudimentary mathematics, astrology, astronomy, which are kind of interrelated.
Agriculture, maybe.
Yeah, well, agriculture for certain. And then there are the social sciences, What are the aspects of family? What makes for good families? How do you teach your children properly? How do you conduct civil society? How do you set it up for governance? How do you do rudimentary industry, which starts with hygiene, basic hygiene, and then progresses maybe to metalworking, pottery, weaving, all of these things, these arts.
You would theorize that along the way they've maybe taught those or imparted those, or at some point.
Yes, and I think it likely was a fairly extended period of education in civilization building.
Yeah.
And very key to this was rudimentary spiritual education as well, having to do with what the relation of humans is to God. And how the relationship as a child of the divine brings to bear a responsibility that we have to the other children of the divine, who are our fellow humans. And it starts at the family unit, as the most basic social unit, extends out to our tribe, and then extends out to our city and our nation and whatever. But there's fundamental precepts of relationship. But without the understanding that we are children of the Creator, we will always be very limited in our love and devotion for fellow humans.
That
it
makes
might be
sense.
natural with our children and our blood relatives. All right, but when it goes beyond that, it breaks down very quickly as that's the other and that's the enemy. All right,
and that would make sense as far as along that kind of theory is why there are several major religions throughout history that have had common core beliefs.
Absolutely.
And that have tied and connected together. Even if they don't have every single aspect of their faith is identical, there's certain base beliefs of a creator and certain good that creates a society that is productive and supports itself.
Right.
Whereas, and that would make sense how there is such a correlation and connection between so many different religions as well.
Yeah. So I think in its most fundamental forms, the teachings were very, very simple.
Mm-hmm.
And that those teachings are still very applicable today. In fact, if we held true to them, we would not have so much of the judgments and separation mindedness that we have. But we've so overlaid these fundamental spiritual truths with so much superstition, so much
rituals,
ritual
right.
things that do not advance us spiritually and actually tend to isolate us socially from each other because
they don't do what I do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So this kind of like play this out
to
now. There was part to kind of bring it to, I think one of the last things that I remember from our conversation that we haven't really covered yet was there was an account that you had said like you think that some of these other planets also look in to try and protect us and keep us from advancing enough to hurt ourselves too much.
Well, I think that comes through anyone who's even kind of a half interested student of the UFO ET.
No.
history.
Yeah, and we were talking about nuclear
would,
missiles, like specifically.
Yeah.
Like,
well, okay. So let's just say this. So many have heard about the Roswell incident.
Right.
Back in the late 40s. Well, what had just happened? We had just exploded.
Cold War,
atomic weapons.
Yeah.
On the planet.
Right.
And incinerated 2 cities with them. Would it be a surprise that if there are advanced civilizations who've been observing this planet and they knew that we already, if they've been following us closely, we already had the physics that predicted that we were going to have nuclear weapons probably for 30 to 40 years prior to the actual detonation of those weapons. So now it's like, they've arrived. And of course, their wisdom is trailing far behind their technological capability.
Wisdom tracking.
There we go. Yeah, we're kind of trailing the wisdom wave again.
Right.
So now, we're like, okay, those humans down there, they're still in kindergarten. Now they have the ability not only to incinerate their own civilization, but now they're also developing rocketry. All right, so they can launch these things out into space. So now the humans on Earth are a threat to other, intelligent races outside our own atmosphere.
Arguably not that far, but still.
Yeah, but they're on their way.
Yeah, to a degree.
And you got to understand that for a spacefaring race that so many of these other species would be, these other species of human, they probably don't just live 80 to 90 years.
Right.
They probably live hundreds, thousands, who knows what. So a little 40 years of technological development time is nothing to them. It's just a blip, just on the time scale. So, now they're like, okay, we need to monitor more closely and make our presence known perhaps and even intervene. So back in let's see, this would have been in I want to say in the late 80s. I'm not sure on the date. But there were several incidents where at nuclear missile facilities both in the United States and in Russia where missiles had been taken offline when these UFOs appeared above the missile base. And those have been
I love your response.
Like the U.S.
well
took them, or-
documented. Yes. In fact, I believe it was
like we didn't take them offline.
But I think it was called Minot or Mino Air Force Base. I think it's in South Dakota, pretty sure. But
that's interesting.
there was the officer. His name was Bob Salas, I believe is his name. But anyway, he gave his testimony about this. As you know, he was an officer in the military. He was on site at the base, in charge of some of the control room operations for missile launch.
Yeah.
And he gets a call from one of the guards up above saying, "Hey, sir, there's these red glowing objects, hovering above the base. I don't know what the heck to do." And then boom, they see all the missiles are being taken offline. Okay, so they've got no control over our nuclear.
Because they think it's the Russians.
Yes, exactly. Because what else would they think?
Yeah.
Now, what we don't know at that time, of course, I'm sure our military, nuclear alert probably went up to DEFCON who knows what.
Yeah.
But
a billion.
Probably
DEFCON
high,
billion.
Yeah, probably high alert. But the same type of things going on over in the Soviet Union.
Don't accidentally hit buttons.
No, not.
Okay. I just got to get really close.
So
sorry.
So anyway, same thing's going on over in the Soviet Union
at the same time.
They're having similar experiences there, and the point being that the whoever is operating the UFOs, it's child's play to interfere with our most advanced weapon systems.
To those that don't know, at least I think I'm right on this. Those aren't connected to anything. Like they're off. They're off, right? Like they take a hard key.
There's manual.
Like they're not on the internet, especially in the 80s. Like there's no remote button to disable those. Yeah. It's all inside the building. And
so
there
was no hacking.
Yeah, they're going offline. There's no way that they could get in there without like somehow remoting in on their own.
But that subject is interesting. The concept of there being potential developments or stages within a civilization that they reach a certain level, and then perhaps that then either gets the attention of a higher level civilization, and then they think, okay, this is a point where we've seen the ramifications of this, so we have to either protect them or stop that from taking place because we know that potentially maybe even harm them.
Maybe they reached a stalemate vote.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah. I just
so for those who want to pursue these type of stories to see where this goes, the best archive of information on this really is through something called the Disclosure Project, and this was a body of information put together by Dr. Stephen Greer, a brilliant man, very, very passionate and dedicated to helping people get up to speed on all of the whistleblower accounts of the various UFO encounters at the military level, intelligence community.
You say David Greer?
Stephen Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer. Yeah. So if you look up Disclosure Project, you'll find this. And when I first met Steve, he had over 400 military, industrial, and intelligence community whistleblowers who were giving their inside information on crash retrieval, back engineering, or interface with the occupants of these UFOs.
Like the Tic Tac pilot.
That would be similar. Okay. Yeah, that'd be like like a one instance of hundreds.
I was gonna say, and you had said like that's like one of like, or like I think when we were talking about Bob Bizarre, you said that's like one of like 500 incidents.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, at the time when I met Stephen Greer, he had 400 of these videotape testimonies where each of them said they would go before Congress under oath and give their testimony. And he had back on May 9th of 2001. He had a briefing at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. That was the beginning of the Disclosure Project. And he had 20 of these whistleblowers give their testimony, and it was
wow.
it was an amazing event.
Wow.
And and so anyway, Steve then went on kind of a I guess you'd call it a tour, basically, called the Disclosure Project. Information conferences and things, and I hosted several of those with some others, co-hosted in some of the major cities on the West Coast, and I worked closely with Steve on some other projects, including some energy-related projects, and met quite a few of these whistleblowers over time. And so when you're having a chance to talk to these guys one-on-one, and you're hearing hours and hours of their story, and you're like, this guy's telling me the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you just tell. I mean, this is not BS. And then, I'd had so many of my other personal encounters of unusual anomalies in that.
So of all these, like, what is the biggest thing that, like, when we talked, like, you kept saying, like, as soon as the curtain was pulled back, like, I couldn't see things the same anymore. I think that's what you said at one
there's
point.
no going back.
But what was it? Was it just everything, or was there like a specific? Was there like a specific moment where you're like, okay, like?
Yeah, well, yeah, I would say on two levels, and one was that we live in a very highly populated universe.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's not just us. It's not just us. We're in a very highly populated universe. And on that spectrum of development of civilization, there would be absolutely no reason to think that we're on the more advanced end.
No.
Oh, it's just no reason.
If people are zipping around space, they're already got that way above us.
Right. Now, and that could imply that not only are they more, technologically capable, hopefully more ethically advanced, and hopefully more spiritually advanced. So the hope would be that those who do come, while they may be perhaps the prime directive of non-interference, but maybe there are some limited things they can do to help educate, or at least make their presence known.
Yeah.
And to help us to come to a greater realization that with life likely being so widespread and highly intelligent and advanced in many different places, that maybe it would bring a degree of humility and closeness to us as a human family.
Yeah.
So that we start to solve our problems together instead of always trying to gain an advantage.
It'd be the human race versus different races and ethnicities, right?
So that's one level. The second level was that, okay, now with this realization, what do I do with my life? Can I ever go back to being satisfied with just watching some football games, having beers with the guys, and go on about a life that is somewhat submerged in its possibilities? And the answer was obviously no. I have now the opportunity to make the decision for a purposeful life that can be dedicated to some type of service that advances our understanding. And perhaps, the things that we do to support our families that don't go away, because you still got to earn a living, and I still do that. Right. But there's opportunities to help impart maybe something to those understandings of origins, history, and destiny. Because part of our history now is what's going on in breakthrough energy, what's going on with our encounters with humans from other planets and all this kind of thing, all of which can be very pivotal in helping to shift us, if not just in technology, that could be helpful if we catch up with our wisdom wave.
Right.
But also in our understanding of ethics and our understanding of spiritual reality. Because what's likely on the most successful advanced race is that they have become so ethical that they no longer need government. They no longer need law enforcement, because such a society is self-governing. It's such a high-trust society. And you automatically make the decisions that are in the best interest of everybody, not just of your own selfish interest.
So kind of backing up a little bit, like one
Sounds
question
like
I had.
Starfleet.
Yeah, Starfleet. Yeah, there was a lot of wars in that too. Like if the government has these technologies, if they even a little bit, like you're saying, like NASA's just the front. It's the public eye sees that, but they've got, Space Force and beyond, and they're already protecting, and they have these things. Then why do they just like falsely put money into people like Elon Musk to launch their satellites or get people to the ISS?
Well, again, there's two levels to this.
But then why would they put that money into that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Because I think it's highly likely that the really good stuff, the real high technology, is not being used for the highest social benefit for our
if they have it, obviously that's true.
Yeah. So what do we see even being done by, the tech companies who operate social media? What do? I mean, they're mining human beings. They're mining your information.
They're mining your attention.
And they censor a lot of information.
Oh my gosh, this last week has been bonkers, like 10 times more than anything.
These are human individuals who have amassed tremendous material power and influence. Are they using it for the greater social good?
No.
And in many cases, no, they've clearly been tempted toward a perversion of the opportunity to serve.
True.
Okay? And so when I said before that you will know the advancement of an individual by how well they align themselves with truth and beauty and goodness. That will be the measure of how advanced they are at that soul level. And if they're not doing that, especially if they are in positions of incredible leverage, all right, a remarkable gift, a remarkable opportunity, and then they make a conscious choice to have non-alignment with those divine principles, and they actively choose evil instead, there's some consequences to that. We're
seeing some of that play out right now, I think. I think that Zuckerberg's going to pay a pretty heavy fee for some of the things that he's doing right now, and same with Jack Dorsey. So my next question to that would be,
can I want to add something there.
Yeah.
The consequences far beyond any type of material fine.
Oh, yeah.
Or imposition of prison time or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the jeopardy of their personality existence. I'm talking about the extinction of their soul as a free will choice. Because
meaning they're choosing it.
When you look at the fact that we are given free will, it is absolute. There is nothing about our free will prerogative that is slavish, any more than any of us as fathers here want the children that we have helped bring into this world. We do not want them to be slaves to us. We want them to love us freely.
Some days I do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we do want these children of ours to operate as free will beings. We do not want slaves. Now we do correct them because we want them to get to a point of maturity where they now have the capability to bring in their own progeny. And move that along. But the free will gift is a sacred prerogative that we all have.
Right.
And we can use it to advance our soul growth, or we can make choices that are not aligned with growth that ultimately results in a form of what you might call cosmic insanity. It's where if we've so consistently embraced evil, where we actually have a disdain for the Creator, and where we so become enmeshed in our ego complex and the separation mentality that goes along with it, that we want to believe that we created ourselves. and that we're the masters of our own universe, and that we hold the Creator in disdain. All right. Even though that Creator still has perhaps a father-to-child relationship, so the love and the desire for the well-being of that child is still there. That rebellious child can do things very destructive, including destroying himself. And that can occur at the level of soul as well. It doesn't mean that the Creator wills that. The free will prerogative of the being, of the human, is very much a prerogative. So we can choose to survive and move on in that eternal destiny, or we can choose to cause our own personality extinction by the choices.
With your
by the way, this is the most serious thing that I'm liable to say here right now, but I think this is the way it is.
Yeah. So with that, then you would not say you subscribe to the concept of Elon Musk's theory that eventually civilization evolves to the point where you're actually living in a simulation. Then
no, absolutely not,
because then that would negate.
So here's the thing with that. If
I'm going to tweet Elon right now. He's going to find out the wrong answer.
Well, and he's not saying it's absolute.
No, I'm just joking.
It's a theory.
So look, the Creator is the author of natural law. All right, and we are given as a sentient being, and as a child of God, each of us is given a mind and a spirit endowment from the Creator, and we therefore have the potential for a soul that is eternal. With that mind endowment, there is enormous creative potential. All right, so like I don't know what your thoughts are on whether telepathy is a fact. I know it's a fact. Okay, and we all manifest it to certain degrees. Maybe it's with your spouse, maybe it's with your children or some friends or that. But telepathy is real. Just as one example of a type of, some might call it a gift or a power or whatever. But it's a capacity that we all have, and it's part of the natural law. It's part of how the Creator, designed things. And the mind has many, many other latent capabilities that we have not tapped into yet. And some of that might be, an ability to transport ourselves very, very quickly without the need of technology, but just with the power of the mind endowment that we have.
Interesting.
Might be the ability to manifest, something, maybe food directly, maybe to heat a room, to light a room, and all that. I've always believed that the technology in many ways is a crutch for us. And it's a crutch to serve as a bridge from where we are in our current very handicapped human condition to the point where if we steward ourselves well with an alignment with the truth and beauty and goodness qualities and steward our social relationships well within our family, our community, our nation, our planet, we can bridge from the technologies to this mind potential realization where we don't need the technologies anymore. In fact, you even hear this in many of the UFO and contact accounts where what the contactee, the human contactee experiences is not a UFO that's actually material.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's something else. And the way the occupants operate the UFO, it's not with like buttons and controls and circuits and all that. It's the mind. The mind is navigating this.
Well, that's sort of how Bob Lazar described it as well, because he's like, there's no explanation for how this energy works. We don't even know how to harness it. And it just hovered on its own. And it was just like there. Like,
So to address your question, I know I tend to do this where I got to kind of go off a little bit. And
it seems like you're kind of bringing like a spaghetti noodle of ideas kind of together.
To do that. Yeah. So with the technology itself, whether it's, the all of the information technology that we have now, all of the advances in computing, communications, aerospace, what have you, all of these things. All right. Can we go out into space using that technology and explore new worlds and all the Star Trek-y stuff? Yeah, we probably could do that. But you know what I would gladly trade for all of that high technology is the development of a highly ethical society of high trust, where we now have such wisdom and such opportunity to use our creative endowments that we have a world that naturally supports this advance of each individual in their soul growth, so that we start to move ahead of the curve by first catching up with the wisdom wave and then riding the wave.
Yeah.
So would you say that there is, as you referred to, technology as kind of a crutch or a bridge to help facilitate to get to another level?
Yes.
Would you say that humans would eventually have the potential to evolve or ascend from the physical form to, I don't know, I guess whatever, the metaphysical, or to another level of ascension that's not necessarily on our physical bodies relying on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the progression from the physical experience, where our soul is embodied in this fairly dense organism here that we have as the physical body, that after we leave this planet, the next step on that journey of ascension, that same soul inhabits another form that's probably similar to this one, but it's not so grossly material. It's slightly more spiritual. It still has its own type of composition, but it's not the gross material. And that there's a wide spectrum of the forms that the soul inhabits, with ever increasing understanding and experience of the capacity for expression, the additional perceptual senses, like we have our see in a certain band of the electromagnetic spectrum that we call the visible spectrum, which actually is tiny, narrow.
Right.
Hearing, taste, this kind of thing. But imagine if on the next level, instead of those 5 or 6 senses, we had 20, and then at the next level beyond that, we have 100. And on as we become exposed.
Or maybe experiencing more of the dimensions.
Well, exactly. But see, like you could say that my vision is a dimension. Like I'm experiencing a dimension. When I close my eyes and I'm not using my vision and I'm hearing, that can seem like a dimension.
Well, I guess but that's still this physical dimension that we know and we can feel, touch.
I understand what you're saying
and whatnot. It's just it's a receptor in one way to take in information.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bizarre to think of it that way, but I mean, our ears take in waves, our eyes take in waves. Even our mouths, the same thing. Like everything that we do, like our touch, our sensation, it's all just but it's pretty limited to this physical realm.
So perhaps there are those different flavors of dimensions,
right? But so far, I can't go backwards in time.
But let's say there are angelic beings,
right?
And that they're actually here in this room. All right, some of them, we can't see them, but they can see us. So what are their perceptual capabilities?
That's what I'm saying. Like
you see, but is it that they're actually in a different dimension, or are they just vibrating at such a frequency that they're outside the range of our visual perception? Because again, we visually perceive in such a narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Oh, it's tiny.
If maybe they're vibrating in the ultraviolet range, and they're right here, but we just can't see them because their frequency is so high that it's outside of our range. You see, so it wouldn't have to be like in an esoteric
fourth
dimension or the seventh dimension or the 12th dimension. It could simply be that we get extended perceptual capabilities within this dimension.
Where I was going that in my head is like, if you were to be able to control traveling with your mind, that your mind has I visually think of what you're describing is like there's peripheral ports on our brain that just haven't been plugged in yet. Our eyes are plugged into them, our mouths are plugged into them, all that kind of stuff. But you have these other peripherals, that additional USB ports, if you will, that I could plug in more things. And one of those might be to use that dimension to get from one spot in this physical space, this 3-dimensional space, using a 4th dimension to get to another space to be there instantaneously.
I want to pull this back to the Elon Musk, artificial intelligence, Neuralink, and these things, because
that's trippy.
That I think that's going down the wrong path. I think in many ways, for what is very much unnatural, the use of technology to seduce us away from our divine nature is a temptation to go down a very dark path. And that could lead to enslavement, Matrix-like enslavement. Mm-hmm. There's a message there.
Yeah,
there's a message there. And here's something for those who think that there likely was or is a very high-level intelligence that was created by the Creator, but at a higher level, maybe angelic or higher than that, who rebelled and who lost their estate because of that rebellion, and has such disdain for the Creator, but yet such incredible intelligence, brilliant intelligence, far beyond the human, and has potentially planted technological seeds here as a very, very intricate plan to have an artificial creation that is the anti of God's creation, which is fully natural. Look at the seduction that's happening with us now. My daughters have phones that rarely leave their palms.
Right.
Okay, and we all see it. We see it all the time.
Oh, I'm totally.
You see, like I've always been one who walks around my city daily, all throughout the city.
Probably not as much right now.
Not so much, at least not the downtown core of Portland, but on a beautiful Saturday, walking through neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Where are the children? Where are the children? How come they're not outside playing around, climbing trees, skinning their knees, in the grass, making up games, being outside in the sun and the fresh air and getting muddy? Where are they?
Well, now they're not supposed to be outside.
They are on a device inside.
Part of it is the pandemic right now.
No, I'm talking before the pandemic.
Yeah. To say right now, Kate Brown wants them inside with masks on.
But I guess
in
my
bed under their
question
sheets.
to you with that, Joel, would be there's a degree of a gray line there, to what degree do you then say technology in your life is acceptable? Like, okay, so we use...
Yeah, because we're not that metaphysical yet.
Well, but I mean, like, they're...
Following that narrative.
So I think throughout every generation, there's generations that says, oh, that piece of technology is evil. And then the next generation says, well, no, that technology is evil. So where do you draw the line?
Well, a technology is not evil.
Or the using of that technology.
But see, it can be used for evil purposes.
Okay.
Because it takes a personality to be evil. So if I break my leg, what am I going to do? If I just lay on my bed for 6 weeks, I'm going to be so atrophied, and I'm going to be delayed in my healing if I just lay flat on my back and approach the healing like that. But now if someone gives me a pair of crutches, which is a technology, and I'm up and I'm moving about and all this, my blood's circulating, now the fracture is getting some stimulus, and so it builds faster. I will heal much faster if I use the technology of a crutch, as a bridge to where I don't need it anymore. So to me, that's the proper use of the technology. So like that, if you hand me your mobile phone right there, so I just have it in my hand. All right. So, this thing is brilliant, but what do I really want it to do? All right. I want to use this, hopefully, just for a necessary communication, and then move on with my life of purpose. But if I use this to go into a virtual world where I'm just wasting my frickin' time, I'm squandering my life and my opportunity to be of service that is aligned with my God-given purpose here, then I have allowed this to be an instrument in the service of evil.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. So I think your concern would more be from the way the technology is used, not necessarily the development of the technology.
Correct.
So Neuralink, for example, they were using it as a potential for paralysis treatments.
Beautiful.
For
Wonderful.
certain, even for
so far they just know that pigs eating are
developments. They actually talked about it. Another thing they had talked about it was increasing your visual spectrum. Mm-hmm. So if they were able to connect it to the actual optic nerve, then you could actually increase your visual perception. Cool. Yeah, so there are ways of that. So okay, that makes sense. Your concern is more so how Elon would, or certain individuals may use technology.
Right now, and then who has the control switch?
Yeah,
That's, you see,
that's
because
key.
it's so easy to see just how these things are manipulated.
Sure.
These things are totally manipulated depending on
specifically social media apps.
Yeah. And where's all the information going? Where's it being? The supercomputers that are
social dilemma,
gabbing all of this stuff. So the temptation to use this for control, manipulation, and to have destructive purposes as the intent. That temptation is so great, and I think we've already crossed into that place.
Yes.
Hardcore.
Right? Well, but I mean, you can see this
part of the lessons of what's been going on here recently.
You can see even something even farther back, though. I mean, to a more global scale, was you look at the atomic weapon, you look at the development of the weapon. It saved, ended the war, but then it created potential for mass destruction as well. Yeah. So I mean, there is scientific developments throughout history that you can see that.
But there's also the realm of miracles. Miracles are real. I've experienced them, and they are on different levels, but they always are at the level of mind. All right, because a thought always comes before the action. So for and I'll use Jesus as an example, who is an historical figure, both 2,000 years ago and at present, for good reason. All right, but the miraculous accounts of Jesus had nothing to do with technology. The accounts, the incredible testimonies and accounts of limbs restored, vision healed, hearing, leprosy, crippling, raising someone back to life. No technology involved there. There was the creative prerogative of the mind of Christ that was at play. That's a God-given prerogative. And we share that same mind, because mind is one. It all proceeds from the Creator's mind, that universal mind. So we have that endowment here.
I'm laughing at my dad. He said, "This guest is sure long-winded." I said, "I don't care. We could go forever."
Court. Okay, Court. Anyway, we've been asked to be miracle workers. And we can do that. I've seen that, experienced that, and it's real. It's a real capacity. It has nothing to do with technology, nothing at all. All right. So when we know we have that capacity, and I would say it again, it's like I don't care what anyone has to say about my own testimony here, because I know what I've experienced.
Right.
And it's like if someone takes something away from this that they find of value, Well, great. Then that was a good purpose for this. If they were maybe just amused and it relieved some tension in them because they laughed at this man, well, then maybe that served its purpose too. So
that's a very elevated thinking.
It's all okay.
Today, it's like removes your ego from it. You're like, I know what I experienced, and if I can bring you some joy, whether that's in ridicule or belief, whatever.
But it doesn't change what moves forward.
Right. So going back to the technology stuff, I'm thinking through like your new energy and like advanced life and all, and you're saying like if we have some of these advanced technologies, let's say that we, for argument's sake that we do, what then is the purpose of and I'm not questioning like maybe your life's work or whatever, but like what's the purpose of a new energy movement if you know that technology that you really, really want might just be there and someone's not giving it out? Why not just petition to be able to have what we already have?
So what the technology provides is time.
Right.
It's time. Because the way we use it, I'll just use energy as an example.
Well, no, I get it, but if we already have it, if the technology is already there and they're just not giving it to us, why would we reinvent the wheel? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, that's been a very frustrating aspect of this whole pursuit, because I'm absolutely convinced the advanced energy technologies have been known by certain human factions for quite a few decades.
Right.
So here's the best way.
Which is annoying.
Here's the best way to lay this out for those who don't quite grok this. So you remember in Operation Desert Storm?
Yeah.
Okay. So we had, for the first time, we had the public become aware of stealth technology.
Right.
Mm-hmm. We're going back to what, like 1991?
Yeah.
Something like that. And within a year after our troops come back, they're flying these stealth aircraft around at air shows.
Right.
The public can see this stuff. Well, look, the conventional wisdom in military aerospace is that there's at least 10 years of technology that's in the pipeline.
That we don't know.
Right. Yeah, that we don't know. So back in 1991, all right, we already had stealth, but there was something that was 10 years more advanced than that.
Right.
So here we are in 2020. 30 years past Desert
That's
Storm.
Weird to think about, yeah.
30 years past Desert Storm, plus the 10 years of pipeline. So we got 40 years of aerospace technological development, all right? Yet we're still supposedly flying around these aircraft that still are just going Mach something.
Right.
Right? Okay, but now you look at every other area of technology, whether it's been communications. So instead of us having one of these,
dial.
Yeah, we got one of these things that is also a supercomputer.
Right.
Right. So communications exponential.
Yeah.
Development curve. You look at medical imaging.
Yeah. CT,
exponential. You look at any number of things in the engineering field and all of this. So many things, whether it's GPS, satellite, all this. But in energy, what are we still doing? Burning coal, right?
Yeah, that's true.
We're burning oil. So we've had none of this exponential development. Well, that's artificial because that development has been there. It's just been kept from us. Same thing with the advanced propulsion technologies. We do have that same exponential curve, and that's the good stuff that's being used in programs that are covert.
Right.
They're not being used for the social benefit, even though we have funded all of that.
Right.
Do you think do you think that there is a large international secret understanding of these technologies, or do you think it's individual countries that have developed this technology to the exponential degrees?
I think undoubtedly there are some who are the top tier players. The U.S. is one of those, but there are is there an international cabal?
Right, that's exactly it.
Yeah, I think undoubtedly that's the case because we see it in media, for instance. Right? We have the media complex, which is global. the players in that, they operate without borders.
Mm-hmm.
They're accountable to no governments. Same thing with the banking authorities.
Apparently, they can call governments now too.
Yeah, it is. So they operate. They operate essentially without impunity. When was the last time you saw any CEO of a bank be indicted and sent to prison for a massive amount of white collar crime, billions of dollars?
Right.
Never happens.
Right.
Madoff was the last one, but that wasn't a bank. That was a stock funds. Yeah.
So they, there are a global elite that operate, outside, the bounds of normal jurisdiction.
I think we all know that. We just kind of like, well, there's nothing I can do about it.
Well, and maybe we can't at the personal level do much about that.
Right.
But what we can choose to do is conduct ourselves as best we can in alignment with the truth and beauty and goodness, because what we have as our potential destiny goes so far beyond what we are experiencing here as these physically embodied men, women. Not to say that it's not vitally important what we are doing here, because it is. Because it's the foundation for what goes beyond this here. So it's really important that we exercise that free will prerogative wisely, and to not fall into the temptation that is being set like little traps and tar pits for us to get bogged down in. And so many of us are falling into that. It's despairing to see how fast that's happening. It's happening to our children. Those traps are laid for our children.
Yeah.
All right? And we got to be smart enough parents to say, okay, it may be inconvenient, it may be hard to do, but I'm going to protect my child from that trap. But those traps are being laid all around.
Right.
And we just cannot be blind to it or lack the courage to address it.
But that ties in though, and also connects to what your question was: why reinvent the wheel to a degree? I guess also it is essentially like we have to keep pursuing, improving, and because there may not be people that have the best intentions that have that technology and have that.
I just wish we could dial out and look at everything and go, Joel just invented this technology and it's literally sitting in a warehouse somewhere. Like
but you have to create it because someone else is not giving it, basically.
Right.
If how many
people along the way have been shut up or
that's how many people have been suicided
or knocked off?
Yeah, there have been a lot. But if you look at the happiness index, you've heard of that,
right? And
you see the happiest people on the planet aren't the societies that have the highest technology.
No,
you see, we've added these layers of complication and stress. We've added these layers of distrust.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that the happiest societies, they aren't there. They aren't there. They are still living in a more natural life, both contacted with the land, the sky. They're in nature more. Their community relationships are very strong still.
Yeah.
And so they're happier. They're living according to the natural laws. And they love to come in contact with technology because it's like, oh, wow, that can make my life simpler.
It's magic.
It is. It does seem like magic. They love to come in contact with it. But their whole society can be taken over by it so easily where they fall into all of the same traps. Next thing you know,
we've seen they're
watching porn websites and falling into all the all the destructive waste of time.
Well, we've seen it with
like that is.
Like when Microsoft or Microsoft hasn't done it most, but like Zuckerberg gave people phones and gave them access and all that out in these external areas, and it's like at first it's good communication, all that kind of stuff, but it's because there isn't these other checks and balances, you can see it destroys some of the elements of their society that you could say it's done the same thing to us, but we have other things that kind of have worked their way up with them. Mm-hmm. So you're a guy that's, and I know that we're like super long, but I could talk for like 40 years longer. So you're describing all this and everything. You choose to live, and you, as far as I understand from my dad and everything, you love Portland. That's your city. Mm-hmm. You've spent quite a bit of time there. You're gone through this like crazy time. Those are taking everything that we've talked about with the society and, seeking better for everyone around us and good decisions and everything. You've watched your neighborhood erode, mm-hmm. and you've lived a little bit longer than we have, and you've seen things change quite a bit. And we come into this climate where we're like some people are kind of still hanging in a balance and wondering what's going on. Some people have decided that there's an answer going on. Some people have decided there's not. What are, like, taking that all into account, what's going on in your head with all that this week?
How to help heal this. How to help heal this. The division that we see here in our country is something that will not be healed by more propagation of seeing the other as the enemy. We got to get beyond that. And the choice of whether there's this one individual sitting in this high seat of office or another individual in that high seat of office, we have, as a society, projected so much from what's going on inside our own hearts and minds out onto others, and not addressing the deficiencies that we're experiencing in our own hearts and minds.
Right.
And we project those deficiencies onto others, and we attack that.
Yeah.
And it's just classic projection. I mean, any psychoanalyst could tell you this, or psychologist, or whatever. It's all kinds of self-help books could tell you that. Yeah. It's just classic projection. All right, and the healing salve for that really is to really look inside again and say, what is it that's really triggering all of this intense anger, this rage, this need to attack someone else just because they have a different idea or they just have a different preference.
Right.
How is it that I'm able to look at them as if they're not even a human being?
Yeah.
Because they're not sharing my same view here.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty rudimentary, really.
Yeah.
It's that, we have forgotten the presence of love in our minds and our hearts. We've forgotten that. And so what ends up happening, the only other emotion besides love is fear.
Yeah.
And fear has many different manifestations, right? It might be a temptation to flee. It might be a temptation to attack. It might be a temptation to steal, or for greed impulses because I'm afraid I don't have enough,
right?
Or that I'm going to be ridiculed because my ego structure is such that I feel that what defines me is someone else's opinion of me, rather than understanding that the Creator imparted my worth to me, and that can never be violated by someone else's opinion. It's established in fact by the Creator. All right. When we're out of touch with with the presence of love that is with us, and how we were created and how we came into this world, ideally through a creative union that was loving, and that was nurturing in love. All right. And that the child emerged and grew and matured through that. That results in the potential of a lot more harmony and a lot more balanced thinking in the maturing adult. The breakdown of the family in our society that's happened, particularly over these last couple generations, where we so many fragmented families. My own family has been impacted by that, my own marriage. So I've seen that, had to live through that and seen the damage that's been done to my own children and then my grandchildren through that, because I was too immature and too unwise and how to have a healthy marriage and all that. I don't blame the other, my partner in that. I came at it with a lot of wrong-mindedness myself and immaturity. All right. So how do we heal these things? It's got to be through forgiveness. And that forgiveness first has to come in our bearing toward our own errors and let it go.
Yeah.
We got to release the past of all of these things and all the shame and guilt that we carry along with us, all the blame and the other projections that we've had, and when we really do practice the forgiveness to ourselves, now we've got a gift. And we can't give something to someone that we don't have already. But when we've given forgiveness to ourselves, now we can extend it to someone else. And I've seen so many times where the practice of forgiveness towards someone who had grieved me, and to where initially I was felt very angry and betrayed and maybe even harbored violent fantasies about how I would want to get even and all that stuff, But to come to that point of forgiveness and then to truly do my best to see that other person as a child, as an innocent child who came into this world just the way I did, in love and in innocence, and with all these tremendous prerogatives of freedom and creative potential that the Creator endowed us with, and really see that person who previously I felt so grieved by, see them as this innocent child, and it transforms everything. Yeah. And the other person, sometimes they feel that shift immediately, and something even miraculous can happen, and does at times. Other times it takes a longer practice of that. But the important thing isn't how the other receives it. It's what we do with it. We got that forgiveness in ourselves. We can extend that to everyone and to our city and to our world. That's how the healing of this divide can happen. And it will happen eventually. And it may take us getting so uncomfortable, that we're like, God help. I mean, literally, like, God help, because we don't know. Yeah. And then maybe there's something that happens that's quite pivotal.
Yeah.
A turning point, or a tipping point or whatever. It might be some type of intervention, perhaps. But I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful. I'm not despairing about these times. It's painful to watch what's happened in my own city.
Yeah.
Because much of Portland has, especially in the downtown core, it's degraded to like a third world status, this beautiful jewel of a city that I've loved for 35 years and very much have been part of the scene there, supporting businesses, walking all over that city. And I can't tell you how many times I have taken nighttime walks through the city where I've been the only human being out there on the streets, but I've loved it. I've loved that city, tried to breathe as much of my own life into it because I have loved it and felt privileged to live there. It's been very painful to see what's happened there. Mm-hmm. But I do really believe that this divide can be healed. And it's not going to happen by continuing to project the way we think it should be on other people.
Right.
That's just more distraction and more projection.
Yeah.
It's going to be at this fundamental inner level that recognizes that we are endowed with a mind, a heart, a spirit of the Creator, and a soul, a progressing soul.
Yeah.
It's a recognition of what has true value, and then recognizing that in each of the other children of God, no matter how they voted.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Yeah, it's so hard to see that perspective when you see like someone be like, you voted for Trump, you're a racist bigot. Well, you voted for Biden, you're a freaking moron. And like, oh my gosh, shut up.
There's essentially,
like
Joel's,
if everyone voted for one person, I'd be a little terrified. No, you know what I mean? Like,
I think that'd
be so uninteresting.
Yeah,
as well,
interesting. You know? No, but essentially, what Joel's saying is, so basic.
It is basic.
It's so basic, but it's so good.
It's
and it's so true.
Basic.
Yeah,
it's
learning
so
to
common
forgive yourself,
sense.
learning to love yourself, and enabling you to do so, to give the gift to love other people as well.
Yeah.
We need to remind, we need to remind each other of this, because we come across it. You know, we teach our children to share and to be friendly, be fair, and all that. But when we so readily just totally discount that in our adult lives, but it's important, I think, especially for men to unabashedly speak to other men in this way. Yeah. That, look, it's not unmanly to practice forgiveness. Yeah. Because I would say the alpha of all alphas, the alpha and the omega, demonstrated strength and forgiveness at such a profound level that it may be a long time before we understand the full implications of that forgiveness. But this was such an outstanding gift and demonstration to us of the power of love and forgiveness to heal, even when it appears to all outside view that we're being attacked. If you know that you're really not being attacked, but that the other simply has lost their awareness of the presence of love and they're acting out of fear. Yeah. You can still choose to love them. Can I have their remote? Yeah. It's very, very powerful.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a great note to.
I think it's
great
awesome.
Message to cap
I think that
with.
Wraps up a ton of what you said, and I've severely enjoyed our conversation.
Severely enjoyed. I like that.
This
I like that term.
A lot of fun.
It's been really fun. Thank you, Joel. We really appreciate it. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in. Testing Normal. Joel, thank you so much again for coming on. Guys,
are you out there anywhere? Or people just like Google your name and
Joel Garbon,
find
guys.
things you've done?
You'll find different things.
Okay,
he's on Coast to Coast.
There you go. Yeah, you can just do that.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
I think you can find, if you're interested in the video of the presentation I made at the conference about addressing
Can we put
the
a
question.
Link on our website for that?
Yeah, I have all those links.
Okay. Yeah, so that presentation of is there a universal religion among the advanced inhabited planets? You can go to the UFO Mega Conference, Laughlin, Nevada, February of 2020, and you'll find a link to that.
Yeah, I have that link, and I have a couple other stuff that people will be able to find you in our show notes. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much,
I'm
Joel.
sure
it was fantastic. It was really fun.
I'm sure someday we'll talk you into coming back again, and we'll discuss the next thing that
the
you
next
decided
advancement
to talk
that comes
for
out.
2.5 hours on. So,
all right, guys.
You've been awesome.
All right, guys. We'll have a good week. We'll talk to you later.
See ya.
Peace out.